Hey guys, you're watching Halborn Flash Videos. I'm Arabdha, and we are talking to Mitchell Amador of Immunefi today. Mitchell, you need no introduction, so I'm just going to start by asking you, what inspired you to create Immunefi, and what's the Immunefi mission today?
If there wasn't a really compelling solution on the bug bounty front, then it would ultimately hobble our industry. And I think that was proven true in the first year of our existence in terms of the damage that could be done. But more privately, I also had quite a bit of my own capital in contracts that perhaps I should not have had. And so I was very personally motivated. I really wanted it to be safer in that way as well. And all these things mixed together to become the motivation for Immunefi.
Okay, and what would you say is the Immunefi mission and vision?
Our vision has always been the same, right? We want to create this kind of proactive immune system for the industry. And we do that. We want to realize that outcome by creating a compelling set of incentives and disclosure pathways so that anybody and everybody in the entirety of the world can participate in securing what we feel will be the future of financial infrastructure. So very simple. That's how we think is ultimately going to be the best way to keep people safe. And that's what we look to do.
Okay, speaking of bug bounties, where do you see bug bounties fit into the cybersecurity spectrum, so to speak?
Bug bounties are kind of the ugly duckling, I guess, of the cybersecurity stack in many ways. I mean, they're super exciting, they're super flashy with what we've done, but they're really, really hard. And it's hard because it's human, right? And if you've ever had to do intensive customer service or had to negotiate big contracts or navigate, sticky, complicated situations, things get really, really complicated really, really fast, and all bug bounty work is like that. So it's the, it's the less sexy side in terms of workflow in the cybersecurity stack. I like to think of it as the last line of defense, right? So first you invest resources into your internal tooling and your engineering team, right? You're going to get the best bang for your buck just by investing in security expertise yourself and bringing that knowledge to everything that you do. Pro tip, hire your security engineer before you come talk to me. After that, you've done all that you can. Now you start investing in infrastructure and services and tooling and whatnot. Okay, great. That's also great to do. You're going to get great ROI on that. After that, you think you've done everything you can. Now you start going to external services. So talking to people like Halborn to help get extra eyes on code. Very good value for your money, but that's the third in line. Now after that, you've gotten a lot of eyes to review everything that you do. You've got a lot of automated tooling running, but you still can't be sure that something's safe. And so at that point, you want to come on the bug bounty side, right? So in order for something to be relevant, ideally, to your bug bounty service provider, whoever that is, hopefully it's us, you want to have set up all these layers so that the only things, right, that make it to that level are the things that, for whatever reason, could not have been caught any other way, hence the last line of defense.
All right, so that was a pretty loaded answer. To sum it up, get your security engineer and team in line, come talk to Halborn or your favorite auditor out there, and then you go to Immunefi for having your last line of defense also set up and hence do your bug bounty. Is that what you'd recommend to, let's say, a Web3 founder who is looking at doing their basic security hygiene?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, there's more, full well, Arabdha, there's a bunch more things you could do. Like we have this cool stuff on the monitoring front that's really just getting started, or more advanced threat detection. But all of that stuff is not yet proven out, right? So there's more that we should probably be telling our compatriots to engage in, but we don't know exactly when that's going to be ready or what form it's going to take. Still TBD.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of great tools coming up out there as well, which should help the industry as a whole. Now, you already alluded to people, and cybersecurity is a mindset. People are often the weakest link. We all know that. What, according to you, would be some of the best practices an organization can cultivate to empower individuals with a security mindset?
Paranoia by default, learning to adopt an attacker's mindset regularly in the course of your work is super valuable and really not easy and not straightforward for most developers, most engineers. So that would be a super valuable kind of small thing that could be done. Encouraging your team, whenever you guys are doing code review, if I wanted to break this, right, what would I do? If I wanted to exploit this, what would I do? And that just requires repetition, training over and over and over and over again. Great documentation is another one, right? The flip side of kind of thinking like an attacker is like, in being a great defender, you need to know your infrastructure really, really well. You need to know the trade-offs that you made in building the system that you did. And it's basically impossible to do that without great documentation. And I'm not just talking about for external providers such as auditors and the like, though of course that's true, but more especially for your internal team, right? So most software products that get made today, it's like you have 10 engineers and then they're all going to understand different parts of the beast. And this is horrible from a security perspective. It's like not obvious, what's going wrong and where and how. So you really want great documentation. You want to make a habit of constantly documenting the trade-offs that you made, the design choices that you made, the structures that you made, because that's going to surface it first to your internal team and then to any external partners to help them, think like attackers much more quickly and much more easily. Right. So that would be a huge step forward. It's also going to enforce discipline and accountability, right? Because you'll be thinking as you write down, well, we designed this system because of this reason. And here are the trade-offs that we made going into that. Well, you're going to be thinking as you do that, are the trade-offs justified? Was that a good decision? And many times you'll discover in hindsight that it was not, right? So this process of writing and documenting heavily the how and why of choices that were made has this huge effect on security maturity in an organization, because it nourishes this kind of critical, hacker type feedback mechanism, right? And of course, it's when you pair that with this very deliberate encouragement to think like an attacker, now you've got a really strong combination in the organization. You're really cultivating this kind of healthy paranoia about whether and how your system is secure or not. So that's what I would recommend for like little things that can go a long way that people should be doing. Of course, there's other stuff like OPSEC and reinforcing that and doing like, spear phishing, simulated spear phishing stuff is super useful, kind of insulating people against that. There's lots of things like that that are also great, but the core one is just, learn to be paranoid in a healthy way, think like an attacker, and create a system, a process for ensuring that you are surfacing to yourself and to the org all the information that is relevant for someone to do that, and you will be, blessed and rewarded for doing so.
Great. I love that sentence, paranoia by default. It feels like this is the DNA of every security professional pretty much, and that added to documentation and asking the right questions is quite paramount in going in the right direction. 5 years is a really long time to look at the industry, right? So let's take 2 years. And in 2 years, what do you see step up as security's toughest challenges?
Well, I think we'll have solved a lot of the bug bounty related issues. Like we'll have very clean, very kind of highly efficient, very transparent workflows for managing bug bounty flows, which will really increase the activity. We'll have very clear pricing mechanisms and thinking and models around reward sizing and why that may or may not make sense. So that'll help. I think the auditing scene is going to be vastly superior in terms of you're going to have like very, very experienced firms. Again, like Halborn, you guys have been around for a few years now, but like add 2 more years to that and you're going to be crazy experienced. Today, we only have a few firms in the industry that have 4+ years of experience, right? That's Trail of Heads, Consensus, Diligence, a few other firms, but it's a very small group. So that'll be super exciting. I think the tooling will be vastly superior. The kind of best practices will be baked into a lot of the scanning tooling of various kinds, and the bar for engaging in work like fuzzing, which today is like be out of scope for a lot of teams. Like this doesn't make sense for them to do. Will be much easier for them to engage on. And also things like formal verification, right? Today it just doesn't really make sense for most people to do. It's too high skill, it's too expensive. The value isn't necessarily obvious, but come 2 years, I think a lot of those problems will be solved. So those will be done. Monitoring solutions will work like people, no, that's a tough one, right? That's what I think about in 2 years. What are we still gonna have struggles with? We're still gonna have struggles with automated security systems, okay? Because it's really not easy to figure out, how to monitor this, particular individual system. Like we can separate things by classes, money markets and lending systems, kind of automated market makers and DEXs, and then, some kinds of other kinds of novel financial markets. Be like, okay, well, we can kind of create generalizable automated kind of threat detection or monitoring systems for that. But like people have been trying that already for a while and it hasn't worked so far. And that's before you even get to the second question, right? Which is more of a political question, which is, okay, so suppose you have good, threat detection in some way or another. How are you going to get political buy-in for having, kind of leveraging the full automation of smart contracts to do instantaneous defense, right? And to create defense in depth. That doesn't really exist today. Those are not security problems, are not technology problems, they're people problems and kind of social policy problems for our industry. And so, like, I look at those and I'm not sure we'll have solved those in 2 years because, in order to crack that, you need to be a bit of a political thinker more than anything, and to have a whole bunch of different skill sets to make someone make it safe for projects and DAOs to adopt these more automated solutions. So I say that's probably the biggest challenge based on what I know. That and insurance, because like the risk models for pricing, vulnerability risk and security risk, like they don't exist. And with the existing risk models that most insurers, cyber insurers and the like use, don't really make sense for what we're doing. And so it's like, okay, well, what is going to make sense? We all want insurance we would like that to be the last line of defense, right? Just like pure financial capital as opposed to any hard power security measure. But I just it's very not clear to me when it will be safe to do smart contract or blockchain insurance. It's just, I don't know when that data set will be ready. So those two.
Right. That's a big question to watch out for. And I mean, you guys also, I heard you in the panel discussion, you were talking a lot about security and denialism. And this is like one of the directions, I guess, where we just have to be paranoid by default and keep watching out for just following the best practices to try and get there. All right. So if you look at your own journey thus far, Mitchell, do you have something that you feel you could take away and probably advise yourself a couple of years back, something you wish you had known before?
Well, I've made a lot of mistakes in this life around this, so that's a very long list of things. But probably the most impactful would be, at least to our fellow technically minded folk or entrepreneurial types, is that people really don't know what's better than the canvas to paint on is a lot larger than you might think. There's bigger opportunities than you might think, and you might be more right than anybody basically around you will care to admit. So it is critical, and we know this in security especially, right? Because all of our work is to take the underdog side and say, well, you guys all think this is great, but in fact, I, one lone person, will show you how you are all wrong, alone, on my own.
Of course.
But that really applies, widely. And certainly, I definitely took too seriously some of the trends when I was younger about how things were going and my relative certainty. Like, you just have to always hold your own counsel at the end of the day and stick with your own convictions, because other people may be right, but they're almost never reliably right.
That's a big one, a big realization to have and also implement. But thank you so much for sharing your insight and also the Immunefi journey with us thus far. It was great having you on this chat, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Mitchell.